Thanks for coming. I'm Conan Tobias, the editor of Taddle Creek magazine. We are. Oh, thank you. We're launching our second comic issue tonight. This is it right here. We launched our first one back in 2009. I dare say this one's even better. There's some amazing stuff in here. You can grab one out of the spin rack up at the front and give Amy $5 for one if you don't have one already. You can also grab our broadsheet comic we did last year for just $1. And these are only $5. It's great to have everybody here. Thanks to the Ossington for having us. Thanks to the Big Owling for the spin rack. Thanks to Amy for working the door. So with the comic issue, it's hard to have readings because they're all comics, but luckily we have one piece of fiction in this issue. The reason we have this piece of fiction, we've done this comic in the Golden Age style, back in the 40s, early 50s. Comics were a little wider than they are today. They were on newsprint, and they were a bit thicker. This one is 64 pages. But they also had to have 2 pages of text in them in order to qualify for periodical postage rates. So we did that in this issue as well, and we have one of our regulars, Gary Barwin, has a nice little piece in here, and I think we're going to have him tonight do that very same piece.
No? Change plans.
He changed plans. He's going to do a different piece, which is fine. We've actually preferred that. He has a little musical reading number he's going to do for us tonight in tribute to the comic issue, and we're going to have a couple other people up as well. But we're going to start with Gary Barwin.
Thank you. Yeah, just watch the... So I thought we'd start with a little bit of hard-boiled fiction. Lester Nylon's second honk. All that rainy afternoon, Nylon hoped that the weekend would end, that someone would come and pick up the pieces. Later, I remember telling him that Nylon hoped the weekend would end, that someone would pick up the pieces. I don't love you anymore, she said. Nylon hoped the weekend would end, that someone would pick up the pieces. He'd opened the first vial, then mixed it with Nylon hoped the weekend would end, that someone would pick up the pieces. She unbuttoned her blouse. The taxi honked a second time. Nylon had hoped the weekend would end, that someone would pick up the pieces. It was clear that afternoon that Nylon, but that the weekend would end, that someone would pick up I Don't Love You. Tuesday. A taxi waiting. The rain falls, sizzling to the sidewalk. The weekend that someone would pick up the pieces. I opened the first vial, and then Nylon, I burst into smoke. I arrived at the hotel, blouse opening like the burning wings of a someone coming to, knocked at the door. There seemed no hope that the weekend would end, that someone would pick up the phone, rang, and it was Nylon. This is the weekend I hoped would end, and someone is at the door picking up the smoke by the burning wings of that weekend would that end, but that Nylon is at pieces, burst into ashes, to someone pick up the first vial. All that weekend, the taxi honked a second. The sizzling Leicester Nylon of no fixed address has come to hope that the weekend would end. That someone would come, pick up the ashen, falling, flaming Nylon weekend, forgotten, hopeful, phony, honking, knocking, vial, opening, ringing, burning, blousy, smoky, blousy pieces, and we can be done for it once and for all and go home for Nylon. The weekend would end, that someone would come and pick up the pieces. I Don't Love You. Blouse opening. I burst into smoke, a taxi waiting. In the wings that weekend, the rain falling, hoping I picked up the pieces, the phone ringing, sizzling, the rainfall ending, the burning hotel. Later, the weekend would end, smoky, Nylon, that. Leicester, later, a taxi pickup. The weekend it ended that someone would pick up that Nylon, Leicester, that pieces of it end, and later that afternoon, Nylon hoped that the weekend would end, that someone would. He fell to the sidewalk. It was a new day. Nylon hoped that the weekend would end, that someone would come and pick up the pieces. And now, I thought it was important to appeal to current cultural, visual language in the work in keeping with the comic issue. So I have a GIF I'm going to play, for which I wrote a beautiful, touching poem. So let me just get set up. This is one of these things where somebody posted on Facebook and sort of challenges people to write a piece about it. So I was, sometimes Catherine Mockler and I end up sparring back and forth writing poems about things. So let me just get the GIF up. In all its glory, I want you to just look at this. Thousands of years from now, people will consider what has our culture given to us. And they will look back at such relics as this and marvel. Dostoevsky said, man can get used to anything. And because grief comes in many forms, I put fireworks in my pants. So it seemed as if the little guy with the flamethrower and pure bliss. Oh, glittering William Blake interstellar pixie dust firestorm. Oh, Dick radiant homunculi bright supernova, jizz of our always expanding cosmos. I am the child of stars, and my sperm sparkles against the small units of human time in which we are bound. Before the funeral, we had nachos, and I said, melted cheese is the semen of Oompa Loompas. We were going to shoot your ashes into the sky with fireworks, but instead you said, do it. And I did, and you literally lit my wick, and it was all bentonite, lifting charge, pyrotechnics, black powder, delay charge, ratio of propellant to projectile mass, and I could think only of you and the equation of state of the propellant, the equation of energy, the equation of motion, the burning rate equation. We humans forged and have faced this fire of hope. We humans, bright burnished steel, and our ductile hearts held by blacksmith's tongs, hammers, then wrought into final unbendable form. I shook in a little hula-inspired hip wiggle, and it all went wrong. Singed the fire fractal fool riding on lawn grass, agonized belly crawl far from the genital sear. Prone sufferer of loss, regret, celebrant of mourning, pranker of death, copula between mortal body and conflagrated schoolhouse of non-existence. I post this video, for I love you still. Well, we can just kill it. Thank you very much. Sorry, I just have to check Facebook before, because I know there's going to be some comments that I'm really going to like, so it just takes me a second before I start again. Oh my God, I can't believe my mother liked. The haircut. Each hair is equal. Each hair is entitled to the same rights, privileges, and caresses by fingers and the wind as every other hair, his father had said. And so he would honor his father. His hair would not be the uneven and unfair coiffure of the past. It would be new hair, long, equal, and proud. The other kids did not understand. They carried him to the woods in a cardboard box and buried him beside an old sofa. On Monday, In darkness, he imagined the innumerable grassland of his scalped savanna. On Tuesday, a vast prehistoric fern rising from the verdant forest floor of his organically vibrant head. Wednesday, prize wreathed on the trackless blonde prairie of his pink pate. By Thursday, he knew that this was another impossible dream. One of his hairs was different. It grew faster than the others. It was magnificent. Sunday night, it broke the earth's surface, and he emerged from his paper tomb. He went straight home and stayed there. He could not leave, for though he had had an extensive style and trim, a short back and sides, a buzz, a perm, a treatment, the one hair again became huge and snaked through the rooms of his house like the black power cords of the many morning talk show film crews who visited him, freakishly imprisoned within his small and now rather unkempt bedroom. For as it had grown, the fame of the single marvelous hair had grown also. The crowds surrounded his house, congregated in his yard, disturbed the neighbors, searching for hairnets, for product, for discarded and possibly unrecognized remarkable hairs. The people came from throughout the land, from over the seas, from salons with blue combed sterilizer water and scented brushes. His hair grew until it was an antenna extending around the world in its normal to oily embrace. Children played beside the hair. They held sections and played jump rope. One a daisy, two a daisy. Let's step in. But the hair divided villages. It was a wall through the main street. Animals coming across the hair in the midst of migration mistook it for an oil pipeline, changed their route, and died. His father would not be proud, though his hair had become a symbol of the earth's pugnacious fertility. It had also become a security fence between nations. The Nobel Prize Committee awarded his hair the Peace Prize, only so they could disgrace the hair by taking it back. Generals met in secret to discuss plans to develop electrolysis from space, but still the hair grew. The children who had buried him talked to each other from the computers in their rooms. They schemed. Something needed to be done. His hair now reached beyond the earth and was as a comb-over for Jupiter. What would happen, they demanded, if the hair curled and began to crowd out the sun? We need the hair, he told them. The hair is everything, good and evil, memory and prediction. It is the spirit of animals lined up one after the other as if waiting for a movie. The drainpipe of space bright with stars. It is 100 deaths descending the playland slide, dark robes fluttering, their shoeless feet pulled up close, the howling throat of a toddler-minded man remembering spring. We need the long hair, he said. It is the ever-growing black stem of a daisy sent from the future to remind us who we are and who we might be. We are equal, he said, but only with ourselves and our futures. The hair is a long finger, and it is pointing at us. The children went into their backyards and looked toward heaven. Satellites moved across the sky, dodging the giant hair. Wind from over the fence tousled the children's bangs. We believe you, they said. We love you. Thank you very much. I have one more piece, and I thank you very much for having me here. It's always a delight to be part of Taddle Creek and Taddle Creek events. So I'd like to end this with a little tender haiku. See, I brought my wrong glasses, so I have it doesn't, so. Nature, I hate you and your petty flummoxing of the butterfly's wing dust. Your immersive credo is irritating. Your pneumatic pontificating does nothing to assuage the oxidizing Chevy of the sub-shifted sub-dwarf sternum thumper that is upper management and my heart. The unrelenting entropic cadenza of your rococo filibustering, your cantankerous obfuscations like winter or autumn are like the brain's catamaran, an oxymoron or an oxytocin, the exact taxonomy unclear but proximate to the irradiated toxins of the deoxyribonucleic aficionados of the spirographic light bright drive-through of the 21st century. Your tune-carrying maw is a vector for collusion. Your vainglorious banquet of pockets, numinous, piping, populous, and astringently verdant with acquisitive glimmer. Nature, you brindled mixmaster, tastemaker, gene marker, your precipitous pox of clouds, no-seum nanodeer, ocean flux of quiddity and riboflavin, the Catholic prestidigitations of your carbonara miracles, the peroxided flocks of your tuskless barnacles, make me your amanuensis only, a portico for your amusement and your fissured and warty biombisit solipsistic landforms. I don't want your bisquick sustenance, the party-colored borders between me and you, some eco-twittered mastication of self, salt water and elementary particles. Your greasy baster injects my sorry canticles with lassoed protoplasm. I'm a burrower of furrows in the forest of your phylacteries. Nature, because of you, a profusion of fission-ready midget-fighting league lions are ready to frack my Orinoco-infused hashtag rich limb jungle vein doilies, rendering the Antarctic taxidermy of my soul's subterranean knife block a geodesic Isaac Brock triumph of isometric 1812 plate tectonic platitudes. I hate you, nature. You emasculate the tusk of my finger holes and leave me parking. Thanks very much. Yeah.
So while our next presenter is getting mic'd, I will slowly introduce him. Thank you, Gary. That was wonderful. So we have no other fiction or poetry in the issue, so we've asked one of our other regular contributors to join us here tonight. Patrick Rawley is one of our longtime contributors to the magazine. If you are friends with him on Facebook, you know he is the world's foremost Batmanologist. Which is why tonight he'll be giving a presentation on the original Captain Marvel, which has nothing to do whatsoever with Batman. But that is what he wanted to do, and we asked him to come tonight, and I'm sure it's going to be great. He's getting mic'd right now. Maybe give a long, slow clap for Patrick Rawley as he makes his way to the stage with a visual presentation. Keep clapping. There we go. He's coming. He's got his tuxedo shirt on. I will mention while he's coming some recent additions to the Taddle Creek, to Taddle Creek's recent offerings. You can now find the Taddle Creek podcast on iTunes, and in a few weeks we will have the Taddle Creek app available, so you can read Taddle Creek digitally. I think he's coming right now. Patrick Rawley.
Thank you. Thank you, Conan. Thank you, everyone. Don't let the outfit fool you. I am a Batmanologist. We're a small but feisty group. We get no respect from those clowns in the ivory tower, but that's okay. Unlike the rest of the population, we're not afraid of clowns. We hate them. Okay, just a slight pause whilst we adjust our accoutrements. The reason I wanted to talk about Captain Marvel is because he was incredibly popular and influential during the golden age of comics. And so I thought it would fit in with the whole golden age of comics theme of the comics issue of Taddle Creek magazine. Let's have a big round of applause for Conan Tobias and Taddle Creek magazine. Thank you. All right. Good to go? All right. Okay. Now that I've dispensed with the opening Batmanology remarks, the first we have to start to examine Captain Marvel. We have to start with Superman. Everything has to start with Superman. He is the first modern superhero, created in published in 1938. He was sold for $130 to National Comics. I've never been able to figure out if that was $65 each Young orphan Billy Batson, a homeless newsboy, is lured onto a mysterious subway train by an enigmatic stranger. I don't know, in 1939, that was normal, I guess. I don't know. The subway takes him to a strange underground cavern where he sees statues representing the 7 deadly enemies of man: pride, envy, greed, hatred, selfishness, laziness, and injustice. I guess they couldn't throw lust in there because it's a comic book. It's for kids. Come on. An ancient wizard is seated on a throne with a massive stone suspended above his head. He commands Billy to say his name. Say my name! And Billy does. Shazam! And with that, the lightning strikes and transforms Billy, and the stone crushes the old wizard. Billy now has the power, the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury. Shazam. It's an acronym of a magic word. While Superman was battling social evils, Captain Marvel's villains were more diverse, not to say bizarre. Dr. Savannah, a cackling, bald, mad scientist who used to call Captain Marvel the Big Red Cheese, and threw soup in his face one time. Have some soup in your eye. He fought a guy named Mr. Banjo. I tried to look up a picture of Mr. Banjo. There is no Mr. Banjo pictures on the internet anywhere. I don't know why. He had a banjo and a wild gleam in his eyes. That's about all I can tell you. I think he robbed banks or something. Iback, who was the evil version of Captain Marvel. Black Adam, who was also the evil version of Captain Marvel. Rawley, the reverse Hitler from another dimension. And then there was Mr. Mind and his monster society of evil, which was all of the above: Iback, Black Adam, Rawley, the reverse Hitler, including the real Hitler and Mussolini. We're all, and Tojo, we're all in the monster society of evil. Mr. Mind was actually revealed to be a super intelligent inchworm from outer space who wore Coke bottle glasses and had a miniature radio strapped around his neck to amplify his voice, obviously. Mr. Mind was eventually executed in the electric chair for the 186,744 murders he had committed, but it's hard to keep a good super intelligent inchworm from outer space down, so he eventually returned. No explanation was given. Ha ha ha, he's evil. He's a worm. The original Captain Marvel was bizarre in a way that's hard to explain unless you really smoke a heroic amount of pot. There's a strange whimsical quality to these stories, as if in a dream, or it's like a little kid's idea of what evil actually is. They were constantly trying to top themselves and double down on the strangeness. There's an entire story that concerns the theft of a pie recipe and is nothing but Captain Marvel being hit in the face by pies for like 8 pages. For 16 pages, sorry about that. Captain Marvel's sidekick was a talking tiger named Mr. Talkie Tawny. No, Cap, we're not going to tell you what's going on here. There he is. Mr. Talkie Tawny. He wore a tweed sports coat. He could talk. He walked with the aid of a walking stick. He smoked cigars, for crying out loud. And he was an amateur detective and comic relief for the thing. In a comic relief in a series about pies being thrown at him. Beat that, Superman. To say Captain Marvel was a success is an understatement. Whiz Comics #2 sold 500,000 copies and circulated 500,000 copies. Can you imagine that? 500,000 copies every single month. By circulation numbers by issue 19 had reached 1.3 million copies per issue, more than Superman. What do we do when something is successful? We milk the hell out of it. There we go. In December 1941, we met Freddie Freeman,
Glasses.
who was a friend of Billy's, who was mortally wounded by Captain Nazi, who was Captain Marvel's villain, Captain Nazi, and gained the power of Shazam by saying the word Captain Marvel, thus making him Captain Marvel Jr., the only superhero unable to say his own name. Billy found his long-lost sister, and when she said the word Shazam, she became Mary Marvel, the world's mightiest girl. There was also a couple of non-superpowered Marvels, Uncle Marvel, who was a lovable con artist, and his niece Freckles, and 3 servicemen nicknamed Fat Marvel, Tall Marvel, and Hillbilly Marvel, who were all coincidentally named Belly Batson, and they gained powers by saying Shazam too. In 1942, Hoppy the Marvel Bunny made his debut, later gaining his own series. He had the strength of 10 bunnies. It's not really all that strong, but, times were different. Times were good, and Fawcett had literally caught lightning in a bottle, but there were dark clouds on the horizon. See what I did there? National Comics, DC, was super pissed at the competition and sent in lawyers almost immediately, claiming copyright infringement. But Captain Marvel was no Wonder Man, and Fawcett was no Fox. DC decided to bury Fawcett in paper throughout the 1940s until things came to a head in 1948. A judge ruled that Captain Marvel did indeed infringe the copyright, but that DC themselves were negligent in renewing the copyright to the Superman newspaper strips, essentially abandoning the copyright to their most famous character. So it was a bit of a push in legal terms. DC appealed the decision, and Judge Learned Hand found no infringement, except, yes, Judge Learned Hand. I believe he integrated the army or school system or something like that. I don't know. Wikipedia's your friend, kids. It's hot in here. It's hot. Judge Learned Hand found no infringement except perhaps specific instances of super feats or situations similar in nature, and said he'd have to retry the entire case in light of this information. By this time, it was 1951. The case dragged on at DC's insistence for another 2 years before Fawcett gave up and finally settled out of court, paying DC $400,000 and shuttering their comics division entirely. The last issue of Captain Marvel appeared in 1954. End of story, right? Not on your life, friend. A British publisher had been reprinting Captain Marvel stories in England and doing quite well with it. Until the well of stories abruptly dried up. So they changed the costumes, tweaked the origin, changed the names, and voila, Captain Marvel became Marvel Man. Captain Marvel Jr. became Young Marvel Man, and Mary Marvel got a gender switch and became Kid Marvel Man. The magic word became Komoda, atomic spelled backwards. And the series lasted until 1963. It was revived by a fresh-faced youngster named Alan Moore, who started with the premise, what if Marvel Man had forgotten his magic word? The series was groundbreaking metatextual deconstruction of the superhero, and one that cemented Alan Moore's position as one of, if not the greatest writer in comics book history. Only it couldn't be published in North America under its original title. Over here they called him Miracle Man. Why, you ask? I already told you. The publishing industry is a haven for criminals and shysters and backstabbing leeches like Stan Lee, head of Marvel Comics. He arranged to purchase the name and trademark of Captain Marvel, not the character, from Fawcett in the mid-60s when Marvel was challenging DC sales-wise and market share-wise. Fawcett, happy to see DC take it on the chin, sold the name and trademark to Marvel, and by 1967, the all-new Captain Marvel appeared at Marvel Comics. And DC got really pissed off at this because he was an alien named Marvel, seriously, and he came to Earth, and there was nothing they could do about it. And he never really sold very well, but Marvel was assiduous in using him regularly to maintain the copyright. If you think this is the end of the story, I have news for you. It's not. There he is. It's the 70s. This is they revamped his costume in the 70s. DC was righteously pissed by Marvel's actions, having spent so much money killing the original Captain Marvel in the first place, that they approached Fawcett and bought the character of Captain Marvel from them. DC had done this before, buying Plastic Man and the Blackhawks from Police Comics until after they ran them out of business. And the quality line of minor heroes like Black Condor, the Human Bomb, the Ray, Uncle Sam, Dollman, and Phantom Lady. Fawcett was pleased to be paid twice for what was essentially dead stock and agreed, and in 1972, the deal was finalized. The only catch was Marvel owned the name. So they had to call him Shazam on the cover and called him Captain Marvel inside the books, which confused little kids and nerds as well, too, I guess. Marvel had lawyers, too. It was to be a triumphant return to greatness for the world's mightiest mortal, but sadly it was not to be. The weird glory and strange whimsy of the original stories, and Captain Marvel became what DC always said he was, an inferior copy of Superman. There was a live-action Saturday morning show, the less said about which the better, and a cartoon show by the hacks at Filmation, but he never really caught on as much as DC hoped he would. He kicked around as a backup in World's Finest throughout the slump and malaise of the late 1970s. Marvel, for their part... Oh, they killed off Captain Marvel. Oh, spoiler. And he actually stayed dead. But they spun him off. This is a series of the Marvel Captain Marvels. They spun off the first feminist superhero, Ms. Marvel. At least they tried. They killed off their Captain Marvel in 1982. And then immediately created a new character called Captain Marvel. That's her right there. She had vague energy powers. She was in the Avengers for a while. She actually led the Avengers for a while. Then she went into space, went crazy, lost her powers, changed her name, went away for a while, and Warren Ellis eventually got his hands on her in Next Wave, Agents of Hate, the greatest comic ever published. Then they made the original Captain Marvel's son, but he went crazy and tried to destroy the universe. So Miss Marvel became Captain Marvel, kind of by default, really. There's Miss Marvel, the original feminist superhero. At least they tried. You know what I'm saying? She went through a tortured history. She lost her powers. She went crazy. She got pregnant, and it turned out that the baby was the father, and there was all weird time travel shenanigans. And it was really, I don't know, man, what was going on in Marvel in the early 80s. But incidentally, now there's a new Ms. Marvel, who is the first Muslim American superhero. So, you know, at least they're trying. That's Captain Marvel's second costume, when she was called Warbird and she was an alcoholic. Yeah, I forgot about that too. That's the new Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. She's getting a movie in 2019, so write that down on your calendar and wait 4 years because it's going to be a while. And the new Muslim American Ms. Marvel. Quite popular, quite good. It's really good. And it's empowering to see representations of blah, blah, blah. What of the big red cheese himself? After 1986 and the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Captain Marvel became a part of the mainstream DC universe. He endured reboot after reboot after reboot. I'm not going to detail them all because they were all terrible. Eventually, Billy became the wizard Shazam. Freddy became Captain Marvel, no junior. Mary Marvel became some kind of weird dominatrix, mind control something in a black outfit. Don't bother. Trust me, don't bother. In 2011, almost 70 years after he first appeared, this is what Captain Marvel looks like now. He throws lightning at people for some reason. I don't know. He wears a hood. I don't know. I liked him better when he was getting pies in the face. You know what I mean? They don't call him Captain Marvel anymore. They call him Shazam, making him the second superhero unable to say his own name. So now you know far too much about Captain Marvel, but I'd like to end with a couple of curious facts. Gomer Pyle's favorite exclamation, Shazam, became a touchstone for future generations who had never read a Captain Marvel comic book in their life, even though 11 people out of 10 these days have no idea who Gomer Pyle was. And Elvis Presley's favorite superhero was Captain Marvel Jr. The King even copied his hairstyle and mannerisms, influencing his more dubious sartorial choices during his infamous Vegas period. Comic books, man. They'll rot your brain and they'll break your heart. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chris Chambers. Happy birthday, Chris. Come on.
Good luck with that, eh? Oh, hello. I've got a poem about my favorite superhero, Sean Connery. Something big's come up. The head of a man wearing a state-of-the-art 1964 snorkel breaks the surface. He climbs onto land, sheds a black wetsuit, emerges in white dinner jacket, attaches an alarm clock to some tubes marked nitro on a drug lord's silo. And he returns to a bar crowded with olive-skinned men where a lone woman is belly dancing. He checks his watch, lights a cigarette. There is a loud explosion. He takes a drag. The bar empties. Cut to the belly dancer bathing in a reedy, tropical hotel room. The man in the white dinner jacket comes to her under the premise of unfinished business. She steps out of the bath. They kiss. Behind them, a swarthy man wielding a knife enters the room. While smooching, the man in the white dinner jacket spies in the wide open eyes of the naked belly dancer his latest attacker. He swivels her around just so, shielding himself, she gets whacked. In the fight, the attacker's thrown into the bath. He reaches for the gun hanging in a holster beside the tub. For precisely one reaction shot's length of time, the man in the white dinner jacket looks lost. Then he harpoons a floor lamp into the bath. There's a groan off screen. The man in the white dinner jacket retrieves the gun and holster, steps over the naked belly dancer, leaves the room. The music swells. The movie starts. Thanks, Conan. Thanks, Taddle Creek. Thanks, guys. Patrick, beautiful. Gary, awesome.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks to Chris, Patrick, and Gary. Thank you all for coming. Please buy a comic at the front. Please take the comics on the table. We'll see you again in a few months. Thanks.